Thank you for listening to this teaching from Casa Baptist Church, located in Garland, Texas. Our mission is to love God, build relationships, and change the world. To learn more, visit casaviewbaptist.org.
In honor of those who have given their life for our freedom, would you please stand, if you can. Father, this weekend is not just about barbecues and cookouts and family events. But Father, it's our time as a nation to stop and thank you for the men and women who for the past 200 plus years have invested everything about them, even to their last breath, so that we could have freedom. So that we can preach and teach and believe our conscience. Father, men and women that did not decide on their own to get into harm's way, but were following the edicts and the commands of those above them. Father, thank you. Thank you, Lord, for the privilege of living in a place called the United States of America. Father, I pray that we would never take that freedom lightly or treat it flippantly. That, Father, we would not shirk the responsibility that that freedom entails. In Jesus' precious name we pray. Amen. Thank you. Very few times do I ever go home to Memphis that I don't stop at a cemetery and talk to my grandfather. As you know, my wife and I and bought a store a while back, and a few months ago, the guy walked in our store, and he knows that I am, I like just different stuff. And, and pretty good at research. And so he brought in this gizmo. And I said, "You have got to be kidding me." He said, "Well, I was at a garage sale and I saw it and I bought it." And I said, "Carl will know what it is." And I said, "Well, Carl wants to buy it. How much do you want to sell it for?" He said, "I don't know, I paid $5. He said, "Will you give me 10? And I said, "Yeah, I'll give you 10. He said, "Will you give me 20? I said, "Well, yeah, how far are you going to go?" He said, "How about give me $100? And I said, "All right, I'll give you $100. That's as far as I'm going to go." I was lying. And he said, "Well, tell me what it is before I sell it to you." And I said, "No, it's not going to work that way. You bought it for $5. I'm going to give you $100. And I'm going to go to the bank. I'm going to get some money, or I'm going to take out a loan or something, and I'm going to buy it." He said, "Well, then will you tell me what it is?" I said, "Yeah, I'll tell you exactly what it is, but $100. He says, "All right, give me $100. So I go in and get $100, and I put it on the counter, and I pick it up, and I touch one for the first time. And you're thinking, "Carl, what's so special about it? Does it work?" Nope. "Can you do anything with it?" Nope. "Well, can you wear it?" Nope. You know what it does? It sits on a shelf and collects dust. That's all it does. But I want to tell you what, in 1942, men died for that piece of metal and gyro. He said, "Carl, what is it?" I said, "That's a Norton bomb sight from World War II. It's the gyro. What you did is you put in the distance, you put in the windage, you put in what type of bomb you were carrying on your plane, and this little gizmo with the tumblers calculated exactly when you needed to drop it according to the sight." And he said, "Why is that so important to you?" And I said, "My grandfather calibrated those while he was on the Lexington in 1944. He said, "Well, how much is it worth?" And I said, "To me, it's priceless." I'm minding my own business on my day off from the church. I'm working the store yesterday, and this guy comes in with a bunch of pocket watches. He's got a high and tight. Now, what does a high and tight mean? That means tight and high, flat on the top. I said, "Air Force?" He said, "How'd you know?" I said, "Well, you're tall and skinny with a high and tight. That means you're not in the Army. You weren't in the Marines." I've seen retired Marines and Navy guys, and they have a, where's Villa? Villa's the only guy I know that retired from the Air Force, doesn't have a tie and tight and is flat across the front. And he said, "How did you know it?" So well, we talked for a little bit, and I said, "Now, why did you get in the Air Force?" He said, "Well, my dad flew A4 Avengers off aircraft carriers at the end of Korea." I said, "You got to be kidding me." So I started telling him about Carl. I'm named after Carl. And he said, "They were in the same space." I said, "I wonder if my grandfather worked on your plane." He said, "Did you ever talk to him?" I said, "Well, he didn't talk. He was a little kid. He died when I was young. But I've studied his record and all that type of thing." And I said, "You know what? I've got something. You need to come over to my man cave case." And I've got this man cave case, and it's got knives and stuff like that, and heavy chains and stuff like that. And over at the side, I pulled it out and I brought it and I put it in front of him, and he goes, "You got to be kidding me." He said, "You've got a Norton bomb sight from World War II and Korea?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Oh man, can I take a picture of it?" I said, "Yeah." So he's taking pictures, top, back, and front. I said, what are you doing now? He says, man, my dad's in the nursing home. He was in the Navy. He's sending his dad pictures. And he looked at me and he said, can I touch it? Yeah. I said, you can even turn the spindles that make the gyro move. He said, did you know? And I went, yeah. He said, what? I said, well, my grandfather's job when a plane was shot up was to get into the plane, rip the bomb sight out before they rolled the plane off the back of the deck. He said in Korea, my dad's plane A4 got shot up and had a bunch of holes in it. The wings were burning, but because it didn't have an afterburner, it means you could still fly it. Planes that have an afterburner, the gas will explode. So anyway, he's following a tanker because he's trying to get off the Korean peninsula, and told me the story. He's got the videotape of where the captain told him to bail, and he said, sir, I'm not going to bail. The admiral gets on the intercom and said, Lieutenant, bring your plane next to the ship, ditch it, bail. And he said to the admiral, no, sir, I have another man on my ship, this plane that's hurt. I'm landing on the deck. He said, our deck is compromised. You can't land here. 12 clicks to your north. It's the Lexington. Go land over there. My grandfather's on the Lexington. Flies the plane over, 18 holes in the wings, lands the plane. Some optics man, whether it was my grandfather or not, pulls that one piece of equipment out because it was so secretive and so useful that guys risked their life and entered a burning plane to pull it out to make sure nobody got it. The question is, why? Have you ever noticed for that he received the Distinguished Flying Cross? Not my grandfather, his dad. Why? Why is it that in our culture today, many young people shun authority and responsibility? And there's this group of guys that are willing to risk their life for a simple piece of metal with wires. That ought to be the question of the day. Today we start a new sermon series that's going to last for the next 3 months. And I call it One-Liners for the Simple. It's from Proverbs chapter 1, verse 4. We'll read verses 1 through 7. The Proverbs of Solomon, son of David, king of Israel, for gaining wisdom and instruction, for understanding words of insight, for receiving instruction in prudent behavior, doing what is right, just and fair, for giving prudence to those who are simple, knowledge and discretion to the young. Let the wise listen and add to their learning. Let the discerning get guidance for understanding proverbs and parables, the sayings and riddles of the wise. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and destruction. Why the collection? He says very specifically in verse 4, very specifically he says, for giving prudence to those who are simple. The word simple doesn't mean simple-minded as in not smart or having a low IQ. The word simple means so that you would understand how to do something. I believe I've told this story before, but I'll tell it again. My youngest son and his wife gave my grandson a 4-wheel pedal cart for Christmas. It was their Christmas at our house, and he opened the wrap, he saw the box, and my son said, son, there's not room at our house for that. You can keep it at mom and dad's. And I'm thinking, yeah, like I need something else cluttering up my house, okay? And anyway, it's sitting in my house closed for 6 months. Damon is coming over for the weekend, and I look at Shelly and I said, you know what? She said, what are we going to do with Damon? I said, we're going to put together his pedal cart and he's going to ride it outside. Not inside. but outside. So anyway, we, with Damon, put it together. My wife looks in the floor. Excuse me, I've got coffee in here. I need to take a sip of it. I need caffeine before I admit what I'm fixing to tell you. There's a nut laying in the floor, and my wife said, "What's that nut for?" And I said, "Well, they probably just packed extra in the box. It's really for nothing. You know, don't worry about it. I've got it all together. It works." I said, "Damon, pedal it." So he pedaled a little bit. We take it out to the sidewalk. Damon's pedaling up a storm. He goes about 15 feet, veers off the side, runs into the mailbox. I said, "Damon, didn't you see the mailbox?" And he said, "Gramps, the steering wheel fell off." "Where did that nut belong?" There you go. My wife looked at me, and she didn't have to say it. I knew it was coming. Nut was extra, right? And I went, "Why don't you read the instructions to tell where the nut goes?" So I doubled down and said, "Why do I need to read the instructions? The steering wheel fell off. There's a spot for a nut there that I happened to miss." "Well, it might be nice that he doesn't wreck it again. Don't you think you need to?" I am not reading the instructions. And he goes, "You don't change." Okay, I put the nut on, put the steering wheel back on. He rode it around. If somebody hadn't have stolen it a couple of months later, happily, I'm awful excited to say, he'd still be riding it. But it didn't fall apart anymore because I finished putting it together without the instructions, only there were accidents. Solomon in verse 4 says, here's the deal. I'm going to give you a series of instructions in life on how to do things and make them work so that you don't have wrecks. That's what simple means. Somebody that needs to know how to accomplish a task. That you would not be simple, that you would not be lacking in understanding. And the other thing is that you wouldn't be gullible. Guys, I want to let you know, we're the most gullible culture on the face of the earth. Why? Because we simply decide what I want, make something right. I got a text from Carla the other day. There's a problem at Manya and Dennis's, and so I said, okay, I'll be there in a little bit. And I got the electricity back on their house, and they had some wires coming out. I disconnected and pulled those up, and I said, how's everything going? I said, well, there's this stump outside in the back. It's just a little bush, and Dennis keeps trying to pull it up. Dennis is, I don't know, he's closer to Methuselah's age than my age. And I said, he's doing what? Said, yeah, Dennis is trying to dig up that stump. And I said, that's never going to happen. She says, I've told him that, but you know how Dennis is. You know, he's an older man. And I said, yeah, older guys are like that. I tell you what, don't worry about it, Manya. When I get off work tomorrow, I'll take up the stump. I've got a problem in my heart. I'm getting over kidney cancer. I've got a brand new knee. I've got 5 ruptured discs in my back. Here's the question. What business do I have slinging a sledgehammer in a mall trying to dig up a stump? But I decided yesterday that I was a 21-year-old cheerleader again, amen? Manya, I can do it. I'll do it for you. Manya, I love you so much. I'll do it for you. Shelly was calling. She said, where are you going? You got the store closed? I said, yeah, I'm going over to Manya's to dig up a stump. My wife goes, sweetheart, are you sure you need to do that? Baby, Manya needs some help. Sweetheart, you know, you don't have the ability like when you were younger. You know, you don't really need to do that. But sweetheart, Manya needs some help, and I'm going to go do it. My wife shows up, and I'm sitting in the chair. I've got sweat pouring everywhere. My T-shirt is torn. My hand and my arm both are bleeding. She says, how's it going? Have you ever looked at your wife and wanted to go under your breath, would you be quiet? An hour later, I decided I wasn't 21, and I called my son and said, son, I'm sorry, but I'm not 21 anymore. Will you meet me at Manya's tomorrow to finish up. He said, Dad, what in the world are you doing trying to dig up a stump? I said, well, son, because I can do it. He says, how's that going for you, Pops? And I tell you those stories because I want to ask you a question. How's it going in our culture today? How's it going? We were reading the Proverbs a couple of years ago, and I told you we're going to have inflation. Matter of fact, the World Economic Forum came out yesterday and said interest rates are going to have to rise considerably from here to get inflation to fall across the world. How's it going for you? %60 of the commercial real estate in San Francisco is now empty because of the crime problems. How's it going for you? Crimes and assaults in our 20 largest cities in America are up 69% in the past 24 months. How's it going for you? Going pretty good? Solomon said, so that you will no longer be gullible. We've become the most gullible culture that I ever read or experienced. When he talks about that you would have knowledge, knowledge is about knowing the facts of life. Solomon said, I'm going to give you these proverbs so that you will know how things work. This is what life looks like. How does a man treat his wife? How does a man deal with his children? How do you deal with people at work? So that you will have discretion, decision making, so you'll be able to make the right decision. Didn't ask John, but I'm going to do it anyway. About 11 years ago, Shelly and I were double dating with John and Cindy, and we were going to a nice place to eat steak. We're going to have to go back. It's the first time I ever had steak Oscars. Phenomenal. We've been 303, Rockwell. Man, it was good. And I'll never forget, because I'm reminded every single day of our discussion. I looked at John and said, John, what's coming up next at Whataburger? I mean, I just wanted to know how he did business. Well, you know, Carl, I was looking out there at Collins and 80, and I'm trying to get them to let us put a Whataburger in out at Collins and 80. It's going to be a great place. And I said, well, how's that going? He said, they won't let me. Say there's not population. Well, there's just a problem. You see, John had some facts that they didn't. John used to be on the city council in Mesquite, so he knew where Mesquite was going. He lives in the area. He knew what the population. He said, the question is not how many people live there now. The question is how many people are going to live there. Beautiful Whataburger there, a gas station where you can get a cheap Dr. Pepper when they actually have it in stock. There's a Chick-fil-A that's blocking traffic. There's a Chinese place. There's another hamburger place that I won't mention. There's doctor's offices. There's a place where you can get your kidney worked on. You can get just about it. He's just filling up with folks. And every time I go by, I think, well, you know, what would have happened if they would have let John put one in when he wanted to and would have been the first one there? When you're the only game in town, that works, right? Because he had knowledge of what was going on there, he could make a decision that other people that lived in another city away from here couldn't make. Solomon said, I'm writing this so that you'll have discretion, so that you will know how to do something in the future. The Proverbs of Solomon, son of David, king of Israel, for gaining wisdom and instruction, for understanding words of insight, for receiving instruction in prudent behavior, doing what is right and just and fair. John Adams, in his farewell address in 1796, stated this: statesmen may plan and speculate for liberty, but it is religion and morality alone which can establish the principles on which freedom can thrive securely. Here's one of our founding fathers in 1796 that basically said the way democracy thrives is that the people in democracy understand there's a higher authority that defines how we live life. Solomon is saying that if you'll read these Proverbs, it will define how you live life. He says that the wise will listen and apply. You see, you and I must understand that we function under a higher authority. It's not about what I want, it's what God expects and what God defines. Solomon, here you have a kingdom that's led by a king, and this king is saying that there is responsibility that you have above me. I've got my first son, Jesse, for Christmas when he was 4 years old. Went into the playroom at my wife's grandparents' house and found a slingshot and some marbles. I looked at Jesse and said, "Now, Jesse, you can't play with those in the house." He said, "Okay." So we went outside, and he was trying to be Deadeye, trying to be a Marine even back then. I said, "Now, when we come in the house, you can't play with a slingshot. Slingshots are outside toys, right? Everybody agree with me? I just want to make sure we're all on the same page." All right, good. Another drink of coffee. So, we get finished eating lunch. Jesse's got this slingshot in his back pocket, and I look at him and I said, "Not in the house." He said, "Okay, Dad, okay." We're all talking after the families had their meal, and my wife's grandmother, Gran, is in their upstairs formal living room. They had the family downstairs and the formal upstairs. I mean, it had, brocade and chairs and da-da-da-da-da. And my wife's Aunt Karen, had been to Germany, and as a gift to her mother, bought her some German ceramic ducks to put on her fireplace. Gran put them on the fireplace because her daughter gave them to her, not because she likes ducks. To a 4-year-old with a slingshot in his back pocket, you see where this is going, right? He pulls out his slingshot, puts a marble in it, gets 6 feet away and goes, shatters this antique German ceramic duck. To which I grabbed him by the arm and said, "Son, I told you don't shoot it in the house. Now you've ruined something that's valuable." Grabbed his arm, I'm taking him outside, and my wife's grandmother intercepts me with vengeance in her eyes. "What's going on, Dino?" I said, "Well, Gran, I'm so sorry, but Jesse shot the slingshot inside the house. He killed one of your 2 ducks. It's over there in the floor. There's still one left. I'll try my best to replace it." And she looked at Jesse and said, "Jesse, did you hit that duck?" He said, "Yes, ma'am, with 1 shot." And she said, "Here's another marble. There's the other one. Take it out too." Now, we have a problem. Jesse is not her son or her grandson or her great-grandson. Jesse's my son, and I said, "Don't shoot the slingshot in the house." Because I knew when that slingshot got to my house, you're not shooting in my house. I'm his father. Grant's not his mother, not his grandmother. She is his great-grandmother, and yes, it is her house. Yes, they are her ducks. But to countervene what I specifically told him, Miss Arden, I told him, Dino, I don't care what you told him. I don't like the ducks, and if he wants to shoot them with a marble, Jesse, you go ahead and do it. Wouldn't you have loved to have been on a fly on the wall to tell you how that went, right? We live in a culture right at the moment where creation says you can't do that. And the created is saying to the creation and the creator, I don't care what you said, I'm going to do this. I decided yesterday that I was young enough and strong enough by hand to dig up a stump. I did make it home. I spent time with ice, hot water, heat packs, pain medicine, aspirin, Tylenol, and guess what? I'm chugging caffeine this morning because there are parts of my body that just hurt. I simply decided that I could do whatever I want to do. And Solomon said, here's the deal. I'm going to give you these instructions so that you will know what to do and how to do it. But a fool says, I don't care how God made me, I'm going to do it my way no matter what. And creation finds out what? That it simply doesn't work. I know some of you get ticked at me. I don't care. Statistically proven facts state that over 85% of all children under the age of 18 that take hormone blocking therapy for change surgeries as an adult regret it. I'm not making it up. I'm not trying to polish things to make them look better. And you have everybody in our culture going today, if a 9-year-old wants to do it, let them do it. You actually have a state in the United States of America that has passed in their House and passed in their Senate that a parent does not have the right to know if their child is pregnant or seeking hormone surgery or hormone replacement or even surgery. A parent does not have the right. Come on, guys. Really? Here's another marble. Take out another duck. This is my house and we can do whatever we want to do. You see, John Adams was right. For democracy to thrive and function, it requires that people acknowledge there is a higher authority than the will of man. The greatest one-liner of all of the Proverbs, if you don't get this one-liner, you never will have the opportunity to no longer be simple. One-liner number 1. Proverbs chapter 1, verse 7. They're going to put it up on the screen. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. That's it. Fear doesn't mean I'm afraid that he's going to beat me or whip me or send lightning bolts. Fear means that I acknowledge the awesome authority and power of God. There is a God and I'm responsible to him. My wife and I are taking Lily Dog out for her run because she was wild when we got her. She likes to run wild, and so every day or so, we'll take her out, pull the leash off, and she'll run. We've got this place we like to take her. It's on the other side of 80 from that farm in Mesquite that, anyway, I forgot the name of it. But anyway, it's over Samuel Farms. If you come in on 80 and you're getting off 80 at Beltline, you're going to miss it. There's just this little gravel road, and there's this middle of this field. And so we take Lily Finn dog, or the dog, and we let her out of the truck, and she's running all over the place, and she loves to run with us. And so Shelly and I are out walking with the dog, and the dog's running circles and lapping us, and I'm going, oh, how long are we going to go today? And I look, and my wife's like 100 yards behind me, and I'm going, what's she doing? We're in a field of weeds, and my wife has got her phone out. Half of the money that Apple makes for the cloud gets paid for by us for my wife's pictures, okay? And there's this weed that's got stickers on it that's got a ball at the top, and these little purple fuzzies just shoot out, and it's just beautiful. And I went, wow, that's pretty. And I'm looking next to it, and there's these yellow weeds, flowered weeds, and there's purple flower weeds. There's some blue blooms on some weeds, and there's some white, and I'm going, this is gorgeous. All that stuff that you and I poison to get out of our yard. Where I come from in Mississippi and Tennessee, the trees are beautiful, they're tall, and your family can touch hands almost if you wrap around a tree. We have trees. In Texas, they have bushes. But in Texas, you have the most beautiful flowering weeds. They're gorgeous. They're all over the place. And I'm going, who would have thought that a field of weeds could be so beautiful? And I thought about Jesus' words. He said, why do you worry about tomorrow, what you're going to eat or what you're going to drink or what you're going to wear? Consider the lilies of the field, the weeds of the field. Have you ever stopped and, Jesus said, and looked at how beautiful the flowers on weeds can be? God did that. Don't you think maybe it's possible if He can do that with weeds, that He can do that with you who are not a weed? And I went, whoa, I get it. My God is God. That's what fear of God means. That when you and I simply acknowledge that our God is God, you have the beginnings of knowing how to live life. But a fool is a person that despises wisdom and instruction. Last week I told you about how it killed my dad. What would have happened if a car would have been coming when the steering wheel on that new little four-wheel thing, because he was right there, he could have veered on into the street instead of hitting the mailbox. Who'd been responsible for that? I know who would have admitted they were responsible. It would have been me. Why did it happen? I've got a doctor's degree. I don't need to read instructions on how to stick 8 nuts together. Well, apparently I do. Solomon's saying, listen, folks, you might think you know how to live life, but the God that created life has given you a set of instructions. Read them.